This is the final of 3 videos for part 2 of Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory. In the first 2 videos, we discussed the nature of complex learning and the principles of instruction. In this video, we will discuss the educational applications of social cognitive theory. There are 2 major implications of social cognitive theory in terms of educational applications. The first is that modeling is the primary source of information for learners. The second implication is the importance of a sense of personal efficacy and self-regulatory skills in becoming a successful learner. The first of 4 classroom issues is learner characteristics. Learner characteristics encompasses individual differences, readiness, and motivation. Individual differences are the differing inability to abstract, code, remember, and enact behaviors that are seen. Furthermore, it refers to the difference in an individual's receptivity to presented models. Readiness is defined by 2 major factors, the development level of the learner and the receptivity to particular models. The learner's perceptual set and degree of anticipated reinforcements influence decisions to attend or to ignore the model. Finally, there are 2 types of motivation: the cognitive representation of future consequences for particular behaviors, and self-motivation. Self-motivation, which develops as part of the individual's self-regulatory system, involves the standard setting and self-evaluative mechanisms of the learner. The second classroom issue is cognitive processes in instruction. This involves the transfer of learning, development of how to learn skills, and teaching problem solving. Research has shown that through self-directed mastery, a more effective transfer of learning to generalized situations occurs. The third classroom issue is implications for assessment. There are 2 influential concepts that refer to the personal characteristics of the learner. First is self-regulation, and second is self-efficacy. There are a variety of assessments that can be utilized. These include self-report surveys, think aloud protocols, unstructured interviews, structured interviews, student diaries, and observations of classroom dialogue. There can be several issues that these assessment strategies can cause. Issues for self-report surveys include that data collected for self-efficacy is in a cross-sectional snapshot and not as a dynamic construct. Data collected for self-regulation is at one point in time and not in a continual process. Overall, the issues for self-report surveys tend to focus on basic competencies rather than mastery of complex situations. Issues for think aloud protocols involve that the students must talk while they work. This can be difficult for some students, and speech can alter the cognitive process. Unstructured interviews allow students to describe in their own words, in an unguided fashion, the ways they manage their learning. Often students will go off on a tangent. Structured interviews do not allow for the expression of students' full opinion, and specific questions are only asked. Analysis of student diaries is not practical for classroom teachers, given the time that it has to be spent to analyze them. Finally, before you observe a classroom dialogue, you need to identify which categories you are going to observe, and you may not witness these categories during a particular observation. The final classroom issue is the social context of learning. Social cognitive theory addresses the issue of learning in a naturalistic setting. It describes specific mechanisms by which individuals learn from each other as they go about their day-to-day lives. Also, social cognitive theory describes that observations of a variety of models and reinforcements influence learning. Finally, it reminds the educational system that learning in a media-oriented society extends beyond classrooms in both subtle and pervasive ways. There are 4 steps in developing a classroom strategy based on Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory. The first step is to analyze the behaviors to be modeled. To accomplish this analysis, one must first ask, what is the nature of the behavior? Essentially, is it a conceptual, motor, or or effective? Or is it a learning strategy? Next, one must identify the sequential steps in the behavior. Finally, one needs to determine the critical points in the sequential steps. These critical points are the steps that would be most difficult to observe and which steps will likely be incorrectly applied. The second step is to establish the functional value of the behavior and select the behavioral model. To complete this step, one must first determine if the behavior or strategy carries a success prediction. For example, is learning to operate equipment essential for a job promotion? Next, if the behavior is a weak success predictor, which behavioral model is most likely to predict success? Third, is to determine if the model should be symbolic or live. You need to consider the cost, if there is a need to repeat the presentation, and the opportunity for portraying the functional value of behavior. Finally, determine what reinforcement is the model to receive for the behavior. The third step in developing a classroom strategy is to develop the instructional sequence. In order to develop the instructional sequence, first you must determine if it's a motor skill, the do this but not this verbal codes that should be used. Then you need to determine which steps should be presented slowly and which verbal codes should supplement but not supplant these steps. Finally, if it's a learning strategy, determine which unobservable processes and self-talk should be modeled. The fourth and final step in developing a learning strategy or classroom strategy is to implement the instruction to guide the learner's cognitive and motor reproduction processes. This step is broken down into either motor skill tasks or conceptual behavior tasks, as we've seen before. For a motor skill task, first present the model, followed by providing an opportunity for student symbolic rehearsal. Finally, one should provide the students the opportunity to practice with visual feedback. For a conceptual behavior task, first present the model with supporting verbalization. If this is a concept or rule, then provide students with the opportunity to summarize the model behaviors. If this is a problem-solving or strategy application, then provide students with the opportunity for participant modeling. Next, allow students the opportunity to generalize to other situations or scenarios. Finally, assist the students in analyzing their application and setting goals. This is the end of the third and final video for part 2 of Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory. Please remember to answer the discussion questions in Canvas, and we look forward to interacting with you all week, and thank you so much.